And I was actually teaching a boxing class at the club in town. And these guys walked right in the middle of my class. And they're like, hey, we need to talk to you. And I said, I'm teaching a class here. And they're like, we need to talk to you outside. So I said, what if this guy owns the club or something? I don't know who he was. So we walk outside, and he's like, yeah, you owe me money. I said, I don't even know you. How do I owe you money? He goes, you don't know me? And once he started talking like that, I was like, oh, no, this is not good. So, yeah, they wanted $2,500 from me. I was doing business in town, and I didn't have it. I told him I don't have the money. He goes, well, you better come up with it.
By when?
Yeah. So.
Did he give you a few days? Or
no, I didn't. Months went by.
Oh, wow.
Months went by. And one day I got a call at my apartment. And it was somebody on the phone said, you owe us that money and you owe it to us tomorrow. And it was a Saturday. And they're saying I owed it to them on Sunday. I said, I don't have it. And they said, well, you better come up with it. And I said, or what? He said, or you're going to find out. I literally hung up the phone, picked it back up, and called Delta and got a one-way ticket to Vegas.
That was a big decision. Obviously, you had some urgency.
I left my couch, my stereo, my TV. I left everything. I literally.
And why Vegas at that time? Why'd you pick Vegas?
I'd grown up here. I'd grown up
you've been
in
here
Vegas.
before.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay.
I was in Boston for almost 10 years. I went back there when I was 17.
Okay, got it.
And I left everything there. I flew out here, and like a couple months later is when all that stuff happened. They started digging up the bodies at the beach. He fled.
Yeah,
and the whole thing came crumbling down like months later.
Wow.
You know, when you're home and you watch like Goodfellas and mafia movies and stuff, it's fun. It's not fun when it's really happening. It's not fun at all.
Well, you come to Vegas, and then here's the other crazy part of the story. You went to school with Lorenzo, your partner now, and I guess you reconnected at a wedding. Tell us a little about how it been, because it's so interesting how these little steps along the way all come together to make something possible.
Yeah, so a buddy of mine, Lorenzo Fertitta, we went to school together, and when I came back to Vegas, a mutual friend had a wedding, and we both went to the wedding. We bumped into each other, and he had just got on the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and he heard that I was doing boxing out here, and he said, I want to hook up and start training. So we got together on that Monday, which was in 1995, and we've been together ever since.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's really cool. But you were friends in high school as well?
What's that?
You were friends in high school?
Yeah. Well, we knew each other in high school.
Close.
It's not like we were best friends and hung out. Plus, you know how that works in life. You graduate from high school and everybody goes and does their thing.
Yeah.
And the people that you want to reconnect with, you end up reconnecting with later on in life. That sort of happened to us.
So UFC comes about, you didn't create the UFC, it already existed, and it was in trouble. And I understand you found it was in trouble because you were managing some fighters, and you had like a lawsuit or something. And tell us a little bit about that.
So there was, the owner of the UFC at the time was a guy named Bob Meyerowitz out of New York. And I managed Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz.
Yeah, I know Chuck, yeah.
Yep. And we got into a huge battle over Tito Ortiz's contract. And through that, one day on the phone, it just all erupted. And he said, you know what? There is no more money. It's all over. This thing's in trouble. I don't even know if I have enough money to put on one more show.
Wow.
And I said, interesting. Okay. So we hung up. I called Frank and Lorenzo. They were, and who would become my partners. And they were in Florida at the time. They owned Station Casinos here in Las Vegas, local casino. And I said, the UFC's in trouble, and I think we should buy it. I think we could buy this thing. We started making some calls. A month later, we bought the UFC for $2 million.
$2 million. And sold it for?
$4.025 billion.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up. So 15 years later, you sell for $4 billion. But, people hear that, and they go, oh, what a lucky son of a... And you know damn well there might be some grace in there, but it wasn't just luck. You busted your ass. And 3 years into it, was it 2000, what was it, 3, 4? You guys you'd burned through $30 million, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
Right. It was close to $40 million.
40 million.
Yeah.
And what was
so
Lorenzo?
We bought it for $2 million. You hear $4 billion, that sounds great. But the burn of almost $40 million was not fun, and it was painful. And
What did Lorenzo and Frank say about that? Was there a point when they were at a breaking point?
Yeah. Lorenzo called me one day and said, I can't keep doing this, man. I can't keep burning all this cash. And I need you to get out there and find out what you could sell this thing for. So that day I made a bunch of calls. That night I call him when he's on his way home, and I said, you know what? Maybe $6-7 million bucks. We're in almost 40. I think I could get 6 or 7 million. And he said, okay, I'll call you tomorrow. He called me the next day.
What were you thinking that night?
Oh, the first thing you think is, man, I just blew $40 million of my friend's money.
Yeah.
That's the first thing you think, right?
Yeah.
And that's not fun. Then the fact that you've put all this time and energy into it, and it just doesn't work. It didn't work the way that you thought it would.
Yeah.
Then he called me back the next day and said, "F it, let's keep going."
Wow.
I said, okay.
Wow. Talk about decisions, huh?
Yeah.
And that decision was different. You look at how life would be so different for
I'm
all of
literally
you.
quoting him. That's what he said to me.
He said what?
F it, let's keep going.
That's
a
awesome.
quote.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You guys must have talked about that date later on, huh?
It's one of the things. When you have a business, first of all, when you have a business idea, there's always going to be detractors and people that think, it won't work. You're always going to have those people around you and in your life, even when you're successful. Believe me, it gets worse when you're successful. Then, you have to get to a point where you don't doubt yourself. You're so into this thing and you know that it's going to work. Timing is everything in life. Timing is everything. And when we got into this business, boxing was starting to decline, and a lot of the big championships and the guys who held titles were in Europe, not in the United States anymore. Boxing had gotten so greedy over the last 30 years. The business actually started to shrink.
Yeah.
And the younger generation, because this thing was only on pay-per-view, the younger generation didn't become fans of boxing. So we took the exact opposite approach. We went back. We wanted to get this thing on free television, put great fights on free TV again, let the younger people become fans of these fighters and their personalities, and have a limited number of fights on pay-per-view.
Yeah.
So that was our strategy. We believed it was a good strategy. And we also believed, my philosophy was always this. Now, if you look at the NFL, the biggest thing in the United States, it's huge, right? Everybody watches the Super Bowl. And there's a ton of sports that we all grew up with, right? In other parts of the world, it's the same. But in other parts of the world, the NFL isn't big like it is here. Can anybody in this room right now tell me who the greatest cricket player to ever live is?